Hello, beautiful creators. I am Steel Maggie, and you are listening to the Mind Made Wrong podcast. This episode, we are joined by Martin. Say hello.
What's up? What's up? It's good
Yes,
to be here.
this is going to be an awesome interview. Thank you for joining me today in my crazy hairness. And for those of you on the audio streaming platforms, in part 2, when it is released next week, we will be on video for you, and you'll get to see this crazy 90s haircut that I'm sporting, and it's absolutely ridiculous, but it's awesome, and I'm gonna go with it, and I'm gonna rock with it. Okay, so let's enough of me, although I could talk about myself all day. Let's talk about Martin, because Martin is one of the dopest motherfuckers on this planet. I love him. So tell us where we can find you, first of all, because a lot of times, we don't want to leave it towards the end of the podcast because sometimes people tune out. Don't tune out, guys. First and foremost, don't tune out. But we want to know right off the bat where we can find you on social media, YouTube if you have one, Spotify. Where are you at?
So the Martin Gachiri Experience, Gachiri. I'm on SoundCloud, Instagram. I have a YouTube page where I'm mostly doing like guitar covers, so that's more of a third party type of thing. But yeah, basically that's where you can find me.
Absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
I love it. It's MGX.
Yes.
MGX.
Yes.
The Experience. Tell us, because you were telling me, tell everyone else, it has nothing to do with Jimi Hendrix, right? Nothing
Yeah,
to do.
you know what? I didn't realize this until very recently. Thanks to Disney Plus. I was watching Even Stevens, and there's an episode where he's in Lewis starts a band, and it's like this making the band type of episode. Is weird, and or behind the music or something like that. And he starts the Lewis Stevens Experience, and when I was watching this episode, I realized that has to be where I got it from, because it like triggered something in my head, and it was a very intense what do you call it, like deja vu type of thing. So sadly, it has nothing to do with Hendrix. Yeah.
You were driven. You were so driven to have that
Yeah.
name. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like, it's good. It works. Like I was just watching Hillary Duff on not Lizzie McGuire. I mean, I love Hillary. I know I just love Hillary Duff, but like I was watching Lizzie McGuire, and I was, oh my god, this show was so good, and I'm probably gonna revisit the Lizzie McGuire movie like really like soon. I love that movie. Like when they go to Rome, and oh my god, most of the it's very funny that like a lot of times it's so crazy because Steel Nostalgia is all about like 2000s music and like 2000s like early 2000s culture, and like a lot of podcasts that I've been a lot of guests, a lot of interviews that I've been starting have always started off talking about some kind of 2000s little tidbit. So I don't know, it's
Glad I could contribute.
Yeah, glad you could contribute. Okay, let's get into it. Tell us your origin story. Please tell us about how Martin came to be, how the experience came to be reality.
I love that question. So I don't really come from like a musical family, so but I was raised around a lot of different types of music. Like my dad loves Bob Dylan and stuff like that. So I when I was, I think, like 10 or 11, 12, something like that, I saw Sum 41 on TV, and that's when I knew that I wanted to play guitar. That's like the first time something in me was like, I need to start doing this. And so I started taking lessons, and from there it was kind of me trying to become a metalhead. I thought that's where I was headed. And so yeah, it's like me in a house full of like non-metal participants, and I'm trying to be like a metal. And when I started playing, my parents had me on an acoustic guitar because they weren't sure I was serious about it. So I'm trying to like play metal on an acoustic guitar in a house full of people who don't want to hear that kind of stuff. So It's kind of just
Just
adversity from the stop, from the top, you know, from the start.
like you're
A lot of palm
just like
muting, yeah, a
trying
lot
to
of
do.
chugging, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
god, that's hysterical. I love it. Like that's oh my god, that's so funny. I love it. I love it. Keep going.
Um, so yeah, it's as cringy as it sounds, but once I did it for, you know, about a year or two, um, I guess my parents, like, they could see I was really into it and that I was kind of serious about it. So I remember that my dad bought me a Epiphone and like a little like Marshall amp, and that was a very intense day because I could finally play, you know, Metallica songs and some 41 stuff and have it sound like it was supposed to. So that was a very important, you know, what do you call it? Like a very important moment, I guess, in that career was getting that electric guitar because it kind of opened up the whole world of possibilities for me. Yeah.
Mhm. I love it. Okay. So you are in a band currently. You have two
Yes.
acts. You have
Oh,
yeah,
the one
you
I
have
completely
you.
failed to mention. Yeah.
You have you and you have Mellorlando, which we are both friends, pals with Bender,
Yes.
who
Yes.
is said frontman of said band. And tell us a little bit about Mello.
So, Mellow Lando, I joined that band after I was in Muse, which is a Cal Poly club, which is for musicians across majors who want to get together and play cover songs. We would meet every week, and there were a lot of musicians I met there that I'm still, you know, in contact with. But basically, he was in a band made up of people from that club, and once a vacancy opened up in the guitar department,
Which
he
never
reached
happens.
right. He reached out to me, and that was kind of the first time that someone asked me, hey, like, would you like to be in my band? So that had a lot to do with me joining in the first place. And then when I heard the music, I'm like, okay, I can definitely get behind this. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's good. Let's talk about your musical style
Mm.
and let's talk about your lyrical themes. What do you write about? What it can be for both. I know because you have more of a collaborative, it's more of a collaborative aspect when it comes to Mellorlando because there's like
Mm.
four people. Um, but tell us a little bit about your artistry when it comes to both acts
Mm.
and how you kind of separate that.
Okay, so I'll just start off as far as separating them. It's a lot easier to separate um Mellowlando because I'm not asked to contribute as much songwriting wise, so
Hmm.
it kind of helps to feel as if I'm part of a team helping create someone else's vision for the most part. But even when I do, you know, contribute for Mellowlando, it's very similar to my solo work as far as the lyrical content because
Uh-huh.
it's typically about, you know, relationships and the feelings behind those, which I know is sounds vague, but I mean that covers pretty much 99% of music, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it can be. It can be. I don't. It's funny. I really don't write a lot about.
mm,
I think I write about relationships when it comes to myself. I write about my relationship with myself.
ah,
I have like I can count the number of like love songs I've written on one hand, and that was because I did the 30-day challenge. So like something had to come out, you know.
mm.
Like,
No, but I like the way you said that though. A love song because I would consider the stuff I'm writing to be like relationship music, but I wouldn't call it a love song. So I like
okay.
I think I'm casting a pretty wide net when I say the feelings behind it because when I think of relationships and kind of the drama behind it, a lot of it has to do with how I feel about myself, you know.
Hmm.
So so yeah, I like how you put that because it's I would consider it relationship related because it stems from those type of things, or at least when I
Adjacent.
write. Yeah, adjacent. There you go. That's a good word for it. But yeah, I've written probably yeah, very few like love songs like I love this person or I love, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, slow jams or stuff like I don't really
It's not
do
like, you
that.
know, like it's not let's get it on Marvin Gaye,
No hips moving,
uh,
at
no
least
Al
not,
Green.
not, oh, I'm trying to picture myself singing like Al Green. Um, yeah, none of that. I haven't really tried that, but, um, But yeah, relationship with
That
myself.
would be cool.
That's an idea, something to put on the to-do list.
Mhm.
Definitely. But yeah.
Al Green is not Motown, but he's got some influences, you know.
Hmm.
I definitely came from out of that, you know, like I think a lot of, you know, or like soul artists came like did have a lot of influences there. So you could do like Motown Martin.
Ooh. See,
I,
alliteration gets me, so you already, I'm sold already.
you got it. No, you have to do that now.
Yo, okay, you know
So
what? I'm
what?
calling it now. That's like a 3 to 5 song project right there.
Yep, Motown Martin. That's
Motown
I
Mark.
see.
Yep.
Things start on this podcast that like I cannot control. So you gotta be ready.
It's funny though because that was a big like influence before I started playing guitar. My parents had this CD collection that was like Motown put out their, I think it was like their number one singles, and they would put them out by like era. So they had, you know, I don't know, 50s through 60s or whatever, and then 60s through 70s and 70s 80s. My parents, I don't know which volume they had, but it had like the Temptations and Marvin Gaye. So that was stuff that I was listening to when I was maybe like 8 or 9. um it, I don't know, it obviously didn't have like a direct influence as far as me writing like that, but it's just interesting that you brought that up. It's like it wasn't on accident.
I don't think most things aren't on accident in general. I'm kind of going through that kind of, I was telling you earlier, like woo woo shit, but I don't really believe in
Hmm,
accidents anymore. I'm not really sure what I believe, but it's not,
hmm.
I am, yeah, this is not about me.
No,
I can quickly turn it around. Um, so let's talk about when it comes to not just the lyrical influences, but
hmm.
your musical influences. Like what kind of genres do you listen to that feed into your creativity and your output
Hmm.
when it comes
So
to the experience?
to yeah, when it comes to the Martin Gachiri experience, I'm noticing as I look back, because you know, it kind of in preparation for this, I started looking back at my SoundCloud, which goes back to maybe 2013, and I'm looking at what I was writing back then, and it's like a lot of it is dictated by what I'm listening to at the time. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
the earlier stuff might have some more punk and ska influence. As I was, you know, still hanging on to that kind of Warped Tour phase of my life, which was very important to me. I never really was into ska band, but I was really into Big D and the Kids Table, and I love the Aquabats. So I feel like there was remnants of that in the early stuff, not in so much as horn arrangements, but just in like, you know, skanky guitar and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and as time went on, it was me trying to find my own voice in kind of this alternative sound. Is That's the way I'll put it, because I love I love hip hop, I love ska, I love metal, I love punk, but it's like, how do I make that stuff kind of work? You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
acts that influenced me directly, I would say like Fishbone was huge for me, because I didn't realize you could be in a band that has, you know, that many sounds across, you know, one project and have that be okay.
Hmm.
Um, Another singer songwriter, Cody Chestnut, was very influential to me. He was kind of this weirdo acoustic dude who he wrote soul music. He's the kind of guy who would sing an Al Green type of song, but then he would also do a song that's maybe 90 seconds long that has, you know, an electronic drum kit and is like him rapping. It just stuff like that where I was like, it it made me realize it was okay to be kind of that off the cuff, and that, you know, this is just what I'm feeling, I'm gonna do it.
Hmm.
So as far as whatever style I do, that's kind of the overarching theme. The kind
Hmm.
of focus is like whatever I'm feeling, just do it and worry about it later.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me that it kind of opened you up to what a song could be and what an artist could be, and what it really kind of the freedom that you actually have in creation and being a songwriter. Is that something, because that was obviously a long time ago.
Mm.
Let's start to talk about how you create now, and what are some of the struggles that you come across when it comes to songwriting, when it becomes to being an artist.
So as far as creating, that's been a the way I create it, it has to vary because I get very stuck, I get very set in my ways. And one piece of advice I got a long time ago was to change how you start writing, change how you approach it. So one thing I like to do is start with a song, or start with a title or a phrase. Um, there's some like generators I found online where you can just like generate a 3 to 4 word phrase. So I'll hear something or read something, and it's like, how do I make sense of this? Or what do I think of when I read this? How would I make sense of it? How would I convey it? So it becomes kind of like a challenge type of thing. So
Ooh.
as far as struggles, I would say tying into that, I think the biggest struggle is just like a self-esteem type of thing,
Mhm.
because I kind of have to
Mhm.
I have to like trick myself almost into writing certain things, because if someone were to ask me to do something straight off, I'd be like, oh no, that would be lame, or no one would want to hear it. It'd be that kind of thing. So I have to like go about it in weird ways. And there have been a lot of my favorite songs have been written through looking at a song title or hearing a drum loop and just going off of that. Um, so yeah, I kind of just have to switch it up and see what works, because otherwise I get too bored with myself, and that's kind of the worst place to be as a creative. Um, yeah.
It's okay. It's good. Absolutely. Do you think um, that, because you mentioned self-esteem,
Mm,
and that's something that I think most, if not like every single artist or someone who
mhm,
considers themselves even remotely creative
mm,
suffers with, is my work enough? you know um um do I, if there's an imposter syndrome. And as we get to
mm,
start to talk a little bit more about the mental health and mindset aspects of this in this episode,
mm,
I want to hear about your journey,
mm,
when it comes to self-esteem um, and self-worth. It's a big topic with me, because I've
mm,
got, my single coming
mm.
out, and it's going to be out by the time this episode is going.
Yes, yes.
But it's a big topic for me, and I'm noticing that it's a big topic for a lot of people and for a lot of my guests.
Mm,
So with that said, let's talk about a time when in your life when you felt, keeping in the theme with this podcast, that either your mind was made wrong or you had a major crisis of self-esteem, self-worth.
mm.
Let's talk about that time.
So as like when I hear that question, the first thing I think of is where I was right after high school. It's weird because when I think back to when I was graduating, like I gave a speech at my high school graduation. I had like a lot of friends. I felt like a pretty charismatic person, but like inside I was just extremely like, just I don't know how to put it. Like I just didn't believe in myself at all. But it's like
Mm-hmm.
it didn't seem to correspond with what was going on around me. So
Mm-hmm.
when I went to college, I started at Cal Poly, and I felt like I was kind of just throwing myself into that situation because it was what I was supposed to do. So I'm kind of in this new environment as far as like how, classes work and stuff like that. I was living on campus. So I was kind of throwing myself into this in completely new context of life, and I didn't have an idea of who I was in the last one. You know what I mean? So it was kind of this perfect storm for a, you know, like a breakdown. I don't know how else to put it. I kind of had to take a
Mm-hmm.
time out from life, and it ended up lasting maybe like a year and a half to 2 years where I wasn't in school. I wasn't really doing much. I spent a lot of time alone, and that's where I was forced to really confront myself. So I consider that to be like my, I don't know how to put it, like training ground for my self-esteem and my,
Mm-hmm.
current mental state. It's like if it wasn't going to happen there, it wasn't going to happen at all. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really where I had to learn to be okay with who I was, and in certain contexts I had to learn to improve myself. One thing I don't think gets talked about too often is like the physical health aspect of, depression and mental health. Because I know a lot of it for me, as soon as I started like working out more and trying to lose weight and just doing more cardio and stuff like that, there's no way that didn't have a direct effect on, my daily mood and my outlook. It gave me like something to look forward to. So
Right.
that was another big part of that.
What did that, I love it. What did that look like for you in that time? How were you living, when you took that break from life, like as you said? Um,
Um,
what did that look like for you when it came to your daily emotions and how you related with other people?
um, so most days I was just like in my bedroom like all day. So as far as it's just funny you say like relating to other people. I guess the closest I got to that was through the internet. I was just trying to communicate with people through forums and stuff like that. But I felt like for the most part I wasn't relating to other people on any kind of level, and it had pros and cons. Like I said, I was forced to confront myself, but the obvious con is that it kind of detracts from your ability to socialize with people. um so it definitely was there was like a downside to that, but it was kind of like taking the good with the bad, as far as that's how I feel when I look back on that.
Mhm, mhm.
um yeah, so it was just a lot of time alone.
A lot of time in isolation.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that that makes me think of something that we were talking about in our preliminary call when you were telling me about how um, just in your family and with the way things were at home, and through no fault of really anyone's, it was difficult for you to express how you were actually feeling and your
Mhm.
actual um, thoughts on things, and that's kind of translated into your still continue in life,
Mhm.
still today. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how you're dealing with that now?
Yeah, so there was just like some like how do I put it, like family turmoil kind of at the time, and there are a lot of instances where I was having to think, okay, am I better off expressing this or just staying quiet for fear of like causing drama or upsetting somebody or this or that. So I found myself, biting my tongue about a lot of things. Um, and like I said, that carried over into after that, where during that time I told you, like there was a time where I spent 2 weeks without talking to anybody, without saying anything out loud. And
Yeah.
on one hand, I'm like, okay, maybe I talk too much. Like that was a legit thing I was thinking afterward. Maybe I talk too much, and this is a way to like keep perspective on that. But on the other hand, it kind of carried over for a while where it's like I got so used to not saying things that it's kind of like you start to second guess yourself sometimes. So as far as now, that what it means is that if I have to make sure I really believe in something, and like I yeah, that I really believe in something before I express it. So what that means is that the things I say to other people tend to carry more weight to them, because they know if I'm going out of my way to express it, then it actually means something. And it's gone a long way into helping me like stop taking things personally, or or overthinking certain things. It's easy to have an interaction with somebody and take away that they looked at you or something they said at you and spend the rest of your day agonizing over it. But not having when I went that long without saying something, um, I was thinking like, I wonder how many times that happens where it's just like someone doesn't realize that they did something to you. You know what I mean? You might be mad about something and they have no idea that they even slighted you. So again, it has like pros and cons. I try to look at the more positive side of that nowadays. Um, yeah, which means that like my words carry a lot more weight with the people who hear them.
um do you think it's crazy because I don't shut up, and I'm sitting here like 2 weeks without speaking, um and you really like you don't like there's so many times when we take things personally, and I think that really, there are things that need to be said, right, and there are things
Oh
that
yeah,
need
yeah.
to be expressed. um do you think that um I mean, yeah, I'm still thinking about it 2 weeks. I'm still like, you told me this in the preliminary call, and then I was like reminded, like, oh my God, that's insane.
Mm.
Um, but do you think that um Was that just, was that like an experiment, or did you just not, it just happened? Like you just didn't speak?
I guess it was a bit of both because it started off as just something that just happened. Like I went maybe 2 days without talking to anybody, and at first it was a very sad realization. It was very like, like beating myself up, like damn, like I
Hmm.
went 2 days without saying anything, and like nobody reached. It's like you start thinking about the
No one reached out to me. No one loves me.
yeah,
You know.
you start thinking about the in that way. But then after a few days, I think what helped me from going too far down in that direction is I went, okay, let me see how long I can go, without saying anything and just see what happens. Like I was at a point in life where it's just like, let me just see what happens if I do this. And instead of doing something like interesting, like drugs or whatever, I was like, let me just not talk. I don't know. Like some people do more interesting stuff. I didn't go to a party or something or have some like weird experience. I was just like, let me just try not to talk. Um, which I think, I mean, compared to where I was like in high school and before that, like I used to talk a lot. So I felt like it was kind of like two different extremes for me. Um, that's why it's hard for me to like tell anyone to try that. Like it's not, I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah.
It's not a mental health tip that you would
Not, no,
recommend.
yeah, no, do not try it.
Did you feel like after that you kind of knew yourself better? I kind of want to talk about how you got out of that hole, and some more of the specifics of maybe techniques that you used, or how did you overcome that deep depression that
So,
really kind of caused you to to not speak for 2 weeks,
I'd say the biggest thing was, as far as starting to get out of that was reaching out to the people around me. Um, it's really weird because I had immediate family available to me in a lot of this, um, like during a lot of that like time, that year and a half or 2 year period. But I was kind of choosing to isolate myself from them. So once I started reaching out to them, they were a lot, how do I put it? They were like eager to kind of figure out what had been going on. Like I remember talking to my mom, and like I went to go visit her, and she started talking to me, and that was like the first conversation I'd had in that like 2 week period. And then after, when I told her about it, she's looking at me like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, why didn't you just like come by? But she also knew like what that meant. She knew that it wasn't just me like feeling down or something, that there was like something else going on. So again, like just reaching out to people, like you'd be surprised. It feels like when you feel like you're most a burden, like that's probably the most that someone wants to hear from you. You know what I mean? When you really feel like you're a burden, it's weird. Like it tends to be that's when people like are most eager to like help you, you
I
know?
sense it, I think,
Yeah.
wow, okay, that's my quote. Like when you are feeling like the most like you're a burden, and like you're
Mm,
a a disease to society or whatever, that's
mm,
when like people really like, that's when you can benefit obviously the most from it, and that's when I
yeah.
think others can also benefit the most from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a really good, that's a great mental health tip. Thank you, Martin.
Mm.
Amazing. Yes.
Mm.
What would you say to those of us who hate talking to people? Even though I love to
Yeah.
talk, like
See,
I,
that's rough. That's rough. Because I'm
I can't stop talking, but I don't like to like. I think it's like a humility thing. It's like an ego thing.
Mm.
It's like, oh yeah, I actually am struggling.
So I don't know. It's like when that kind of ties into the whole, creative aspect of things, because when I wasn't talking to other people, when I was kind of forced to confront myself, it was coming out in the form of like lyrics or in a guitar riff. I used to write these kind of like instrumental guitar pieces. I don't know what else to call them. But that was kind of my idea of expressing what was on my mind, this kind of a beyond words type of thing. And so I was able to find something to latch onto to express myself. So if someone doesn't like to talk, I would draw something, paint something, I don't know, like write a letter. I know like something
Ooh.
to, there are other ways. There's got to be something out there for everybody to latch onto that can help them get that energy out. You know what I mean? Get that
Mm-hmm.
emotion out. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or help them experience community in a way that is not, too foreign to them.
hmm,
Or some even just like community when it comes to just being in connection with yourself and with,
hmm,
whatever you believe to be the universe or God or anything. I think it's when we get so isolated,
yeah.
in all ways of thinking, that it's like it's me, myself, and I. Um, it's selfishness without realizing that it's
Hmm,
selfishness. I think, and that's what, depression does, is that, my mom is a therapist and she's always like, depression is a liar, and I'm like, yeah, mom, I know. And but she's so right,
hmm,
and it's an isolator.
hmm,
And um so I really like that you can do um, many different things. That doesn't have to be necessarily talking to someone on the phone.
hmm,
I hate talking to people like on the phone.
hmm.
Like it's weird. Like I'd rather
Yeah,
like see you like this, like face to face, or like
yeah.
actually like in front of me. It's like
Totally,
there's this
totally.
voice. It's like I feel like I'm, still,
Hmm.
I don't know, I don't, when did they start having phones? Like it's still that foreign to me. Like a phone call is still, I don't
Hmm.
know when Alexander Graham Bell did
That's
that
like, I
shit,
don't know,
but like, yeah,
the
like
20s,
I
19
know,
or
or like
1890 or something. I don't know. Yeah,
I'm
see, I'm
back.
not.
I'm simultaneously like in this century and then like back there,
Okay.
at the same time. So, and then I'm also in the 90s because
Yeah, with
like
the hair.
with the
Hmm.
hair and everything. I wish y'all could see this on part one, but you will see it if you
Hmm.
watch the YouTube video because you're watching it right now. But not right now, but actually right now in some weird form of time and
Right now, right
future
now.
past.
Future past.
Woo. Okay, I'm being very silly, but
Hmm.
I laughed. It's good. Okay, so that is um I feel like in everyone's story, in everyone's guest story that comes on this podcast, there is there is a pain that
Hmm.
has been overcome. Um, there is a pain that still needs to be contended with, but there's also
Hmm.
a message that comes from that, and there's something to be shared. What
Hmm.
is what do you think is the most significant struggle that artists face today? It can be musicians, it can be, painters, just
Hmm.
creative people today, when it comes to their mental health and their creative output.
Hmm. I would go back to, especially in an age where there are so many voices out there, when it's so easy to kind of put your expressions into some kind of public forum. I would say just self-esteem. Like, I promise you, if you're at home feeling like something you did is cool, there's at least one other person who's going to appreciate it, or there's going to be more people who like appreciate that you're expressing that. So like, the biggest thing is for me sitting at home and like listening to a loop that I made, and I'm like, this is cool, but what is someone else going to think about it? And it's like, that question is already, you're already kind of digging a ditch. It's like, the first part is most important. Like, how are you feeling about it? So I'll say, so especially in, if you're around a lot of people who make music, if you're, you're like on a streaming platform or something, you see there are this many artists out there, you might feel as if something you're making isn't as original as think it is. Like you're saying, that liar is
Mm-hmm.
telling you that, is telling you to second guess yourself. So that's the biggest thing by far, is just, trusting yourself and believing in something that you like, you know.
Ooh,
Hmm.
ooh. That's been what I've been getting into. So good. Okay, so there's so like my brain is going in like so many different directions right now about like what we can talk about. But absolutely. So I just had like this, everyone, well, not everyone, but like everyone who listens to this podcast knows, and everyone who kind of knows me and following me knows what I've been, going through in these past like 3 months,
Mm,
the incident that happened, and or at least just a little bit, the basics.
mm,
And I got sober, and
mm,
I the the craziest things, like 3 months of being sober, almost, probably by the
mm.
time this podcast comes out it will be. um
Eh,
yeah, I know. 3 months of being sober, I know, it feels like it's been 3 years to me.
mm,
But 3 months of being sober, I've done more in my life and I've gone more and I've grown more in my brain than I did of 7 years of drinking. I'm
mm,
26 now. I started drinking when I was 19.
mm,
um and it's just, I have learned so much about who I thought myself to be, the traps that I was putting myself in,
mm,
places I went mentally, and the places I stayed for no
mm,
reason at all. And the the entire reason, the main reason why I was drinking is because I hated myself. I
mm.
hated everything about myself. And I thought I loved myself, and it was life of a party and everything. And so my entire thing these past 3 months is rediscovering, or maybe even discovering for the first time,
Mm,
self-worth,
mm,
and how to, and it just like just experimenting with the crazy idea that
mm,
I have value.
mm.
And that's a big deal, obviously for me, because it's my life, but in the artistic
Yeah. No, I was
but
following you.
yeah, in the artistic community, because we're just, like you were saying, it's just pushed down, that, like, it's just pushed into our throats that we're a drop in the bucket.
Mm,
Especially, like, if you don't have a bunch of money behind you, or if you're an
yeah.
indie artist, that's a bad thing.
Mm,
um and it's you are never gonna get plays, or you're never gonna get heard, or your artwork is never gonna be purchased or seen if you don't buy
mm,
my program, or if you don't,
mm. Yeah.
you don't pay for my playlist.
Go to yeah.
And it just really, it feeds it just like, it feels like, I feel like sometimes I feel like prey, and like we've got these
Mm,
vultures, swarming around us. So enough of me just going on about that. Although that was an important preface. Um, how did you go about finding this sense of, because we were talking about in the preliminary call about this sense of value, and how did you discover your that, or how did you go about just accepting that concept that your life has value, and that your work as an artist also has
mm.
immense value, and it means something to someone else? Because you were saying that it's like, oh, someone else is going to like your art, doesn't matter. um but that's hard to wrap your brain around, when it's like you can't
Um,
even feel it for yourself.
mm.
Why does my art,
So I really like that question. So first off, I'm like very fortunate to be in this age. As I was talking about, it's very easy to have so many artists kind of on the same platform and in the same environment. At the same time, it's easy to get your music in the hands or in the ears of people all across the
hmm
world. Um, so the first time I started seeing some kind of value in my music was as soon as I was brave enough to start showing people what I was doing. One of the first things I did at Cal Poly that really got me in that mindset was when I did the like a 30-day songwriting challenge, which I think was like
Yes.
2016, 2015, something like that.
hmm
And so that's very much like a forum, like you're saying, like a community. There's a very communal aspect to that when you're around people who you respect as musicians, you respect them as songwriters, and you're all in this weird boat of trying to like push something out every single day. And so when you get feedback in that kind of context, it really means something. And of course, before that, as I'd been playing guitar and kind of improving throughout all these weird like stages of my life, as far as like my mental health and this and that, like there was always that in the background where someone would be like, "Oh, this guy's kind of good at guitar." and it never really like registered with me. Like I was hearing it through high school, but I never, even now I don't consider myself like you know, like I'm all right, but like I getting feedback from other people is like the biggest thing for me as far as reminding myself, because I guess before, because I guess otherwise I wouldn't be putting any of this out. I would just be like, it'd be cool for like a self-esteem story if I was just like playing this for myself. But as far as wanting to feel as like I'm, you know, part of some kind of community, um, it helps to get that feedback from other people. So I guess one specific story I can think of, I wrote a song called Perfect Day based on a prompt I got where someone asked like write about what your perfect day would be. So pretty straightforward. Um, so I put it on my SoundCloud, and maybe I don't know, 6 months later, it was a good amount of time later. My sister was actually out of the country, and she texted me saying she was like in Paris, looking at some, you know, some building. I don't know, it was spelled weird. She was like, "Oh, it's sunset. I'm looking at this, blah blah blah," and I was listening to your song, and it was like
Aw.
such a good moment. No, right? So she's like, "Oh, you know, it was such a good moment," and that like totally killed me. Like I know even the fact that it was my sister of all people, it's like I never imagined that something I put out would have that kind of effect on someone where they would listen to it and kind of attach it to a positive memory. So just knowing that I kind of had that power in my hands. I don't know how else to put it. It was very, it makes you feel like more human. You're like, I feel this way when I listen to other artists' music. To know that I could have someone feel the same way about something I do, that was like, that was the biggest like, you know, plug. Like it makes sense now. You know what I mean?
It
Um,
clicked when it turned. I love that you said I felt it made me feel more human.
mhm.
I mental health issues just because they are isolating, it's
Mhm.
also it can be very dehumanizing. You know, you
Mhm.
feel
Oh yeah,
abnormal. You do abnormal things, you know, when you're being isolating yourself, you're not getting that like human contact, so it kind of makes
yeah.
it, by virtue of that, it makes you feel like separated.
Oh yeah,
um
yeah.
and so I love that's part of like your community engagement, and
Mhm.
that's so sweet. That's adorable. Sometimes family is not supportive. You know, I'm very lucky to
I
have a supportive family, but
yeah.
sometimes
Saying this
weirdly
out
enough, they're
loud is
not.
making me realize that I'm very fortunate to be in that kind of situation where, you know,
Yeah.
they didn't like the metal riffs, but as soon as I kind of moved on from that, they were more or less like supportive. You know what I mean? So I'm very lucky in that regard.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, sometimes our families, like the people that we're most close to, like don't actually like our music, but
Mm,
they'll support us because they know us.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, I guess you're not being fake, which is good. Like you're not like pretending to blow smoke. You're not blowing smoke up in my ass just because.
Mm,
Um, well, that's good. I would like to know. So, do you have any? We're talking more about community and things that
mm.
we can do to overcome, that sense of terrible depression and self-loathing. And do you have any resources when it comes to um, exploring more of that, and when it comes to mental health? It can be, a book or a YouTube channel, or just, people have said, that they take medication.
Mm.
Is there anything that you personally, do, or meditation, something that you do on a daily basis that keeps you, moving forward and doesn't keep you stuck in the hole?
So, I do smoke bud. I don't know if that counts. I didn't want to like come on here and like act like I was the advocate, like this is the cure for everything.
This is the
So,
weed episode. It's
like,
not,
nah. So, but you know, when I was thinking about that question before this, the biggest thing, again, I feel corny saying this, but I think about like my mom. Like, whenever I have a discussion with her, and she asks me how I'm doing, I end up learning something about myself or learning something that I take with me after that conversation, you know. So like one thing I talk about, or something I think about a lot is, um, I was thinking about like self-esteem and not taking things too personally, you know, not overthinking small interactions. And I remember a conversation I had with her a few years ago. I was complaining about somebody in my life, and I was going, oh, you know, this person, they keep, you know, asking for this and then doing this. They keep, you know, it feels like they're messing with me on purpose. And all she just goes, don't assume someone's intentions. Like, you can't do that. And that's all she said. And it blows my mind because I've been thinking about that for like 2 or 3 years since, and it applies to so many situations where you might have a bad interaction or somebody that you're complaining about kind of in your inner thoughts, and you're about to go down this road of like, oh, I bet they, and it's like that doesn't, yeah, it's that thing. You already know it. That's exactly what it is.
Everyone listening to part one right now, or I don't, it's probably not part one. It's actually, considering the amount of time that we've spent, it's probably part two, but still listening. You're like,
It's like
everyone watching knows what's happening, so you should watch.
that exact
But
posture. It's like,
yeah.
it doesn't help anything, and 9 times out of 10 you're probably wrong. So talking to her, she always has some kind of like wise thing to, you know, help me think about my problem in a new perspective, and remind me that most of the things I'm thinking about aren't that bad in the grand scheme of things. So
Mm-hmm.
that personally, I know some people kind of take that as like a, they start to feel guilty about their situation when they take that kind of road, but for me that's just a way to ground me and like remind me that like, dude, this isn't that serious. Like, yeah.
This is this is small beans.
Yeah, for that's my, yeah, that helps for me. um
That's so sweet. Oh my goodness. Aren't you just a sweetheart? Just kidding. Um, so yeah, you know what? Don't feel bad about the weed thing, because like I one of the guests on this podcast long time ago, actually one of my
Mm,
first guests,
mm,
he you know,
mm,
microdosed, you know, and
mm,
that was his way, you know, and
mm.
you know, he was very anti-medication, and you know, so we all
Okay.
have our different ways. I take, you know, 2 different medications a day,
Mm,
and you know, that's my way, and some different things work for other people, but
mm.
going into the what's it called, my mind just went dead, just
Well, while
out.
it's dead, I was gonna say I did write a song called Microdose. That's on one of my SoundCloud pages. That was directly inspired by I wrote it on like a Super Bowl Sunday after I took one. Yeah, it's on. It was from the RPM challenge I did in like 2018, which is like an offshoot of the
Mhm.
30
The
day.
30 day. Yeah, it's like
So
10 songs in a month. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
Bender
this
was
was,
telling me about that.
I think, yeah, he's doing it this year. I think this one was like 2017 or 18.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's one of my favorite songs. So shout out to that dude, wherever he's
Mhm.
at. That track is actually, I have like 2 alternate SoundCloud pages because I was running out of
Space.
space on the on the first one. So Microdose is on Release the Heretic. Um, that was like the
Oh,
band
that's
name,
a
right?
badass name.
I have like band names that I'm like, I got kind of stored, but that one, yeah, that one's Release the Heretic. But
Oh my God. I would like go to like every single like Release the Heretic show, even if I didn't even like the music, just because I
see,
love the name. I just would be like posting on Instagram like,
I feel
I'm
like
with
I'm
Release the
cheating.
Heretic.
It sounds
I'd
like
wear
a
that
hardcore
shirt.
band. Yeah, see, with
Yeah.
like the, yeah, see, I don't, it's not that type of music at all though. That's what's, but anyway.
Yeah, but like you like, because of the name you'd get like listens, I think, and like, you know, it's like because people think, and then they're like, oh, but this is actually really good music, and
And
they're like,
yeah,
oh.
that's another good idea. Yeah, I should start
Told
a,
you about this podcast. Like, you, just by virtue of talking, we get shit
no,
done
for
here.
real. I'm trying to think of what it would be like if someone were to see that name and then see my picture and then hear the music and be like, okay, that's a good reaction to me. Like,
You're very
yeah,
eclectic, you know, when it comes to, I think like when I listen, when I hear your music, and when I like and when I also like juxtapose, like, you know, with the juxtaposition of Mellow Lando, and then there's you, it's, you have a lot of different influences, but then it just like look at you and it just makes sense, you know. I really I appreciate that. It
Thank you.
becomes cohesive at the end of the day.
Mm.
So we are gearing towards the end of our time. I want to ask you a little kind of like a two-parter question.
Okay.
I am thinking about legacy lately and vision, and I want to know what your vision is for your career and for the community of artists and listeners. It doesn't have to be the community that you seek to serve. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Um, I, I never really had, I guess like high aspirations when it came to this, like as far as reaching like certain heights, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
It
I
doesn't
really
have to
just,
be. Yeah, it
no, no,
doesn't have to be. Yeah.
I just say that to say that like I kind of always just wanted to be that, like that guitar dude. Like that was just my only real goal. Like if I could be, um, yeah, if I could just have that, like, or like, oh yeah, that was the guitar dude. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I want that on the on my tombstone or something.
Too bad the Instagram handle that guitar dude is probably already taken.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's
Several
probably
times
like
over.
super good.
Yeah.
Like I don't. He's probably a shredder or something. But no,
That
no.
guitar
Anyway,
dude.
that was. I like that question because I'm thinking like in short term and long term. Like right now, what I'm thinking about. I want to, like, I have so many like little snippets of ideas from those years of doing the 30-day challenges and the RPM challenges, that like I would love to just have some kind of like project that covers that era, that's kind of like the finished versions of my favorite, 10 or so tracks from that, because I have stuff where I'll go back and listen to it and it's like a 30-second thing and I'm like, why didn't I ever finish, so it's like there's a lot of stuff that kind of fits that category. So in the immediate future, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about re-recording a lot of stuff and making it into a coherent sounding project, and having that kind of represent what I've been doing the past 10 years or so. Because you ever like read about certain artists and their albums and they're like, oh, this song I wrote it when I was this old, and then we recorded it like this and then like this and then like this, and then it finally ended up on this project, and it might be like one of your favorite songs, but you don't know what it was like 3 or 4 demos ago. I just love that idea of that process going on for so long. And so yeah, I just kind of want to finalize a set of stuff and have that be like, this is when I was at Cal Poly, this is that like time of my life, this is
your eras. And
yeah, so yeah, it's kind of like that Motown thing I was talking about as far as the volumes of discs and whatnot. But I don't think of it in terms of like my beginner or whatever, and now I'm here. It's kind of like it's it's like the closest thing to what do you call it, like a photo album or something like that, because I don't have a lot of pictures of myself. So even with like cell phone, like I didn't take a lot of pictures of myself. So that's like the closest I have to hearing something and knowing exactly what I was feeling, what I was thinking when I put this together, like it.
What you were wearing, it's like it's like,
No,
I
for real. Yeah.
love that's like a photo of you, but it's not a photo. It's an audio photo. I guess
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
song, isn't it? Like an audio photo. Music is like a song is like a little audio screenshot of
Yeah.
how you were feeling. If you could just take a picture of that, I guess that's what music aesthetic is all about. But like the way you said it just like made me think about it in a different way.
All right, cool.
So that kind of, I want you to tie it in a little bit, because I'm realizing what you're saying is kind of tied to my last question, in that how have you created beautiful things so far in 2020, and what is your what are your plans to continue to create beautiful things for the rest of the year? So that can be, you know, is that a short-term plan when we were talking about, you know, vision, or is that like something that you're going to get done this year, or?
Um, I I guess I want to call it both. Like I'm thinking of it as a short-term plan, but it is something that's gonna probably take this year for me to finalize. Because as
Mhm.
I'm thinking about that, I have some songs that I've been, you know, sitting on and haven't, that I've been like kind of waiting to put out, that are done, that are more how would I call it? They're like sukus inspired, so they're kind of like
Mhm.
more related to, you know, my parents' roots and like that side of my life. So I kind of consider that like two separate things. I don't know how to describe it. So like I want to put out some of these, you know, kind of dancey, guitar-y singles, and then just
Mhm.
have that be,
They'll have that more roots feel. Yeah.
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 And then kind of, because I mean the stuff from my 30-day challenges, it's kind of like all over the place. So
Of course. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I feel like they both together, they kind of represent an entire picture of me. But the stuff that's more like roots inspired, you know, that's been what I've been working on for the past few months. I'm kind of just, you know, recording this in my room and trying to make sure it sounds perfect before I show anybody. Um, so yeah.
Don't wait too long. Don't wait too
Right.
long. We want to
Yes.
hear it.
Mm.
It is it's your sonic picture of what's right now. I think, you know, it's it's really important to, I know it's like we're all like perfectionists when it comes to this, but it's really important not to, I think, not to keep things, everything in the vault for too long,
Oh yeah, for real.
because then you start to get isolated from it. You start to like distance yourself from it, and then it's like it's sometimes hard to like promote it genuinely, because
Mm.
it's like you're not identifying with that person
I
anymore.
the one of the first projects I ever wrote was like right after I did my senior project at Cal Poly. Like I finished that, and then the relationship I was in, it ended, and I had maybe a month before the end of the semester, or the end of the quarter, and I told myself, okay, I have 30 days. I'm gonna write, you know, 4 or 5 songs, and whatever I come out with, I'm just gonna record it, so I don't have time to second guess myself. And like you're saying, you might not feel connected to like promote it genuinely, but like when I recorded these songs in these 4 weeks and, you know, mixed them and put them up, and I was able to show people like this is exactly how I'm feeling right now, and like I would love for you to hear it. Like it was a totally different vibe than
Hmm.
what you're saying. How even the songs I'm thinking of now that I'm waiting to put out, it doesn't feel quite the same because it's been a while since I, you know, started writing them and started recording them. So I totally understand that difference in energy when you're
Hmm.
like you have something new, and it's like that was kind of the goal for me doing that in the first place, was to not give myself time to second guess myself, and it ended up being like it ended up working out. So I got to kind of thank you for reminding me of that. That's kind of like what I got to get back to. um,
Of course, and I need to listen to that too, because like I'll sit. It's not, to me, you know. It's funny is the songs that I write, like they become more true with time.
mm,
Like me and my producer have this thing about like I have prophetic like songwriting when it
uh,
comes to my life and about
mm,
myself. So it's what I'm going through at the moment, but then it
mm,
morphs and changes into um, something more rich as time goes on.
mm,
So I don't really have that problem, I guess. But like
mm.
I do but like it's still relevant to me, because it's
Mm,
like if I sat on holy ground or like out of Eden, you know, for too long, it's still like I'm still changing as a person, and
mm,
like I just feel that it needs to come out of me because other people also need to hear it as well.
mm,
So it's not like my music, all that
mm,
shit, but like it's like
mm.
I really just have to share it. It's just like, you know, this is, I don't know, it's like vomit, you know.
No, no, no. Like you said, no, it is
Yeah.
kind of vomit, right? In
Yeah.
that it has you might think it has flaws, or that it's not as perfect as it could be, but that, like you said, if that inspires somebody else to express themselves, like they need to know that it's not going to look perfect if they have that kind of emotion, or if they're going through something like that. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think you definitely have the right idea in wanting to put it out for that reason. Yeah.
Yes, I did it. I did something right. Are there any? other beautiful things that you are looking to create in 2020 before we
Um,
go?
I'm kind of I guess my YouTube page. I like to do guitar covers. That's kind of like something that keeps my chops up as far as, not getting too lazy playing. And I have a video that I put up like maybe 3 weeks ago of like a Suku's cover, so very African-y, very
Ooh.
Carnival Cruisy sounding.
Hmm.
Someone told me that once, and that like bugged me, but they were very right. So like I
You
couldn't
were
be
like
too mad.
offended at first, and
I was
then
like,
you're like,
damn
oh,
it.
wait.
Yeah. Someone's like, man, you need to be on a cruise, man. I'm like, dude. Yeah. So anyway, anyway, so yeah, YouTube, Martin Gachiri experience. It'll all come up. Yeah.
I am so into it. I don't think I'm subscribed, so I'm gonna
I just hit
subscribe.
150 like yesterday, so
Oh my
nice
God,
to
let
know
me
you were not
subscribe to
one of
you.
the 150. You could be
Apparently
151.
not. Am I? I don't know. I need to
I
check.
don't know. We'll see. Better late than never.
Right. um okay, thank you so much for joining me. This was a different interview. Sometimes in the preliminary call, like, there's like, I think it's going to be like this, and
Mm,
then it always turns up turning into something else, which is, oh, but it's
yeah.
always
Yeah,
better.
this
Yeah.
was different than I was expecting, but
Yeah,
I'm like excited to see how this comes out.
it's always better. It's always like, it's like different, but then it's like, oh, we explored like different thing. We explored what we were talking about, but like in a new and fresh and positive way,
Yeah,
um
yeah.
in a very consumable way, I'm hoping. So yeah. um awesome. Please remind us where we can find you again on
Uh,
the internet.
Instagram, YouTube, SoundCloud, the Martin Gachiri Experience, Gachiri. There you go.
Mhm.
Everything you need to know.
The experience, yes. And SoundCloud is your main dude for
Yes,
streaming and things like that. Okay,
yes.
amazing. Thank you so much. And
Thank
everyone
you.
out there listening and watching, I love you guys so much. Um, it's just amazing. We have come, I think, so far on this podcast. It is getting on not a full year yet, but it's been crazy. I can't believe that I'm still doing this, and that I this is the one thing that I've done consistently.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you all for being here and just being just beautiful listeners. You've got to subscribe to Martin Gachiri. You've got to listen to him on SoundCloud, follow him on SoundCloud. And if you are not yet subscribed to me on YouTube, what the fuck are you doing? Because it's right there. If you've
Right
managed to
there.
get this far, why didn't you subscribe? and to Martin, of course. And if you are listening to this on audio, please share it with another beautiful creator.
Yeah.
You're giving them a beautiful gift. You're giving me a wonderful gift.
Hey.
I am so thrilled to see what the future holds for all of us. But I have to sign off now. So until then, I will see you next week, right? I did that backwards. I will see you next week. But until then,
Until
let's go
then, wow.
create.
I like that.
Oh my God. Martin. I will see you next week. But until then, let's go create beautiful things. Bye
Peace.
bye.